Hey everybody, it's Kat. I am excited to connect today around how we tell ourselves stories, how we live into stories, how we explore our stories. This has been such an epiphany for me in my life because for so many years I lived my stories unconsciously and I embraced them with such a sense of purpose. I was true to my stories because I emboldened them and I identified so much with who I thought I was and what was important to me. And I think we all do that. We take pride in, our ego gets a little bit involved in how we self identify. And then we aren't quite as aware sometimes of how we can shift a story or tend a story or love a story. We just live our stories and we don't quite know how to unravel the past to make space for the current journey and the future journey. And I want to tell you a time in my life that I actually became so aware of shifting a story. And it was when I was at sort of a crossroads in my life and I was on a walk by myself. I don't even think I had a dog with me. I was on a solo walk in a wetlands in my local area where I lived at the time in Northern California. And I was feeling deeply and I was musing or thinking and started to engage the imaginal. And I had my hands in my pocket. It was a rather gray day. And I felt in my pocket a crumpled piece of paper. And I felt myself identify with this piece of paper in my pocket that was crumpled as a reflection of me. And I felt myself as a crumpled piece of paper, trash, something to be thrown in the trash bin. I felt the dissolution of my life in that moment as I put my hand around that piece of paper in my pocket. I felt myself transformed and reduced to that piece of paper that was unformed, not worthy of being transformed, that paper in my pocket was me. And in that moment, what happened to me in my mind's eye, the imaginal took over. And I saw my hands take the paper and flatten it, transform it, bring the paper out of its crumpled form and into a flattened form. And that moment, that act of straightening out the paper, seeing the wrinkles on the surface of the paper, but feeling it straightened and flattened and take the shape of a piece of paper, restored my sense of what was possible in that moment. And then the next thought through my mind's eye in that imaginal realm was seeing my hands fold the paper and take that paper into another state where it became dimensionally different. And that was taking the paper and transforming it into a shape through origami. So the flattened paper changed its shape and became a bird. And then it unshaped itself, and I saw hands shaping it into a ball where the origami went from flat paper to the bird and paper bird into a ball where it became spherical. And it altered my sense of how a story could reshape itself and how I was the paper that could be reshaped. Those were my hands, but they were not my hands. That was me as the paper in its crumpled state and then transformed to be flat and then transformed into the bird and then transformed into the sphere or the ball. And it changed my life. That moment of a story being told through an image inside my body, inside my mind, and inside my heart changed me. It transformed my ability to see that stories could shift. And that what I felt inside my life, because there was a feeling state originally with that sense that I am trash in my pocket, I am being discarded, was also altered in that moment. And I could hold more of my stories. I could hold all of those stories that I experienced in probably nanoseconds. That showed me that there was a different way to be inside my own life. Now, by the way, I don't make origami well, so it was not a realistic moment. It was an imaginal moment that guided my life. It was the images that told me a new story is possible. That I could unfold a new story in my life, that I could live a new story in my life, that I could step into a new story in my life. So I want you to think about how stories can be told in a moment that you believe to be true, that you feel are true, and how they can reshape themselves, how something new can unfold for you, or be smoothed, or be envisioned in a completely different way. Clarissa Pinkola Estes has a beautiful quote that I have loved that I want to bring in here to this conversation. I hope you will go out and let stories happen to you, and that you will work them and water them with your blood and tears and your laughter until they bloom, until you yourself burst into bloom. This invitation, let your stories happen to you. Go out and let stories happen to you, can really be informed by archetypal and imaginal work. When we can really see that we are more than the self that walks through a day, that walks through the mundane ways that you meet every day. I get up, I go to the bathroom, I take a shower, I put the coffee on. You know, we all have habits and maybe rhythms. Some of us may have very regular ways we begin our day, practices, or very predictable things. Others, maybe more nonlinear or varied days and varied habits and unpredictable ways. But the curious thing is, how do you let new stories happen? How do you recognize when a story is stuck? And how do you invite new stories to happen? I didn't go out that day into that wetlands, onto that walk, knowing that I needed to have an imaginal moment that would change my life. I was taking my feelings and my shitty day with me on that walk. And I knew that I needed to move some energy, but I had no idea how that was going to happen. I didn't predict that a piece of paper in my pocket could bring about such a dynamic experience. So sometimes it's just like take yourself on a walk, take yourself out the door, take yourself into an opportunity and invite stories to happen to you. And that when they do happen to you, you will work them. You will allow them to bloom because you'll water them with your tears. You'll create the space to be in the ring with your stuff. Life is full of stuff, right? So we bring ourselves to that curious place or that really difficult place of, gosh, I don't know if I want to avoid this. I want to avoid this. I want to bury it. I want to take myself away from this moment. No, invite the moment to be expanded, energize the difficult stuff, because sometimes that is where stories will start to shift. Seek the storyteller, seek the story weaver, and unravel the story. Take it apart, cut a thread. Go to your closet and get an old sweater. Not maybe the one that you love the most, but one that you're ready to let go of and unravel the threads. Take it apart. Take it down to the bone. See what will happen if you are willing to let it come undone. That is a really powerful place to explore. What can happen if? What am I when? The archetypal self and the self that you don't expect to be the healer is going to really help you move some energy. And I invite you to a masterclass. I have a grandkid in the background screaming, so you might hear that, but you might not. Zoom does a good job of blocking sounds, but I want to invite you to a masterclass where we're going to be working with our archetypal selves, different parts of self that can actually come to help us to shift our stories and live into new moments in our life. So come to the masterclass on July 7th and see what you can do to bring about some active shifts and reorganizing around how you hold your stories, how you carry your stories, how you might step into a new story. If you're feeling that sense of, ooh, something new is ready to happen, but there's something in my way, there's something blocking, there's something coming in the midst that really is blocking me from my destiny, my next steps. You know, this happens to us at all stages of our life. I work with women in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s, in their 90s. There is no time when you are done growing and knowing that a new permutation, a new way of unfolding yourself and reshaping your life is not possible. Unfold some new stories and step into that new sense of, I'm arriving in my life. Something new is ready to happen. And even when circumstances feel like, ooh, I'm being stopped. No, you're not being stopped. You're being invited. You're invited through a new threshold, and a story will emerge with you if you're willing to water it, if you're willing to allow it to take a new shape. So join me and let's step into this new masterclass together. And I can't wait to begin. Of course, it's free, so you can join below. And I hope that this conversation and me sharing some of my stories is helpful, because some things that will happen to you, you'll never forget. And reshaping a story is one of those.